This is the No More Wasted Days podcast, and we're your hosts, Sarah Kaufman Bradstreet
and Heather PG. Grab your favorite NA drink and listen as we share vulnerable stories so you never feel alone on your alcohol-free journey.
And gain insights from us as we break down our most used tips and strategies that have kept us alcohol-free.
It's time to break free from wasting any more of your days to the drinking, blackout, hangover cycle.
Welcome to another episode of the No More Wasted Days podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sarah.
I'm Heather.
And today we are talking about creating new rituals. And I think that this is so important because I know there's a lot of people out there that just started dry January and are probably catching themselves going, oh my gosh, drinking was a really big ritual for me or habit. But for me, it was a ritualistic thing, which I didn't think it was when I first quit drinking. I definitely didn't think it was when I was a drinker. Did you find the same thing?
I have always called myself a creature of habit. Now, did I think it was a ritual? No.
Did you think it was when you quit?
Yes.
See, I told you I was going to trick you today.
You did. Yes. Yes, I did. The more I learned and the longer I stayed alcohol free, I was like, wow, this was a true ritual in my daily life.
And I totally didn't think it was. I mean, I knew that it was habitual for sure. I knew I had a lot of habits around alcohol and I knew I was going to have to break those. But when I started realizing that it was actually these little rituals throughout my day that I had around alcohol, and one of them was our at-home happy hour that Ryan and I would have. It's like we would get together about 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and one of us would be bothering the other one in the office space and being like, hey, do you want to stop working and go do happy hour out on the patio? And it really was this ritual to end our workday. And there were other ones that just took longer for me to tackle too. And I'll talk about some of those as we go. But the first one that I did tackle was that happy hour. And then as I started learning more, I had ones like going out to a restaurant after we'd go hiking, and we always would get a pitcher of beer. And I didn't tackle that ritual for a long time. I was like, okay, we can still go on hikes, but when we do, we go straight home. So what rituals did you have around your drinking that you actually realized once you quit drinking?
I drank every evening, so my whole evening was a ritual around and, weaving in alcohol. And like you said, the reward, ooh, I've done something healthy. I'm going to have a glass of wine or a margarita or what have you. Then I realized it was woven into all of my holiday rituals, all of my celebration rituals, so on and so forth.
Definitely with the holidays and celebrations for sure. That's where I started to see it more and more. And it's interesting to me because you will start to see these things pop up more and more the farther you go on your alcohol-free journey, because you'll experience more things and you'll start going, oh, that was a little ritual for me. And today we're going to talk all about how you can replace your drinking habits or rituals with healthier alternatives. And I'm going to go all through why rituals matter. I'm going to help you identify your triggers and old rituals. And then we're going to help you create healthier rituals in your new alcohol-free life. So it's going to be jam-packed. If you just started dry January and you are catching yourself realizing, oh my gosh, I thought about alcohol more than I thought I did, or alcohol was a bigger part of my life than I realized. This is a great episode for you, so stick around so you can listen to it all. Before we dive any farther into the topic, I do want to remind all of you to go check out the links in the show notes and check out our Daymakers community that we have and one-on-one coaching with Heather. Especially if you're brand new to your journey, the Daymakers can help support you. We have weekly group coaching calls that Heather and I host. We have a private message thread community. So if you are having a craving, you can go in there and say, oh, help me out. I'm having a craving. Help me get through it. And there are just so many awesome benefits that come with that Daymakers membership. So check out the link in the show notes and it'll give you all the details. And Heather, did you want to talk about one-on-one coaching for just a moment?
Yeah. So, one on one coaching with me, check out the link in the show notes. That's like the introduction, so
Mhm.
to speak. And I talk about this very topic with all of my clients, along with, okay, how do we do it that is applicable to your life and your lifestyle and your goals, along with setting boundaries. Who am I without alcohol? Improving your relationships and really getting you where you need to be. So, check it out.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into this topic. We're going to talk first about why rituals actually matter. And rituals play a key role in providing structure, comfort, and meaning in daily life. I thought that was interesting as I was doing my research because I was like, oh, they are just a huge part. And you may be thinking ritual is such a big word, but I think you can interchange it with habit as I go through. So if you are thinking ritual is this big thing, that must be a huge religious ceremony. That's not what we're talking about. You can replace it with habit if that feels better to you. But for me, I really do like the idea of it being a ritual. Another thing rituals do for us is they offer a sense of predictability and stability. So if you know, oh, it's predictable for me that I'm going to want to drink at 3 p.m., that would be the end of my work from home day for me. And it was just predictable for me. And even though it wasn't a healthy thing, it made my day feel more stable because I knew it was coming. And rituals will often mark transitions in the day. Like for me, having my pre workout drink would signal it's time to work out. That's a ritual I recently had to break. And it was really hard, actually. It made it so basically for like the month of November, when I gave it up, I didn't even want to get out of bed because my pre workout had become the ritual thing to get me out of bed and go drink that pre-workout. So I knew it was, ooh, time to work out. Turns out I can do it with water, amazingly enough. And I used some of the same habits to break that ritual that I did with alcohol. But even when I go pick up my kids from school, that's a ritual for me that I do every day. And it marks the end of my workday for me. So I just want you to start thinking about that in your day. What are some rituals you have? And they don't have to be about alcohol right now because I think that helps you start to see like these are all around me. For me, drinking became a ritual because it did all of those things that I mentioned above. I knew when I would drink, so it offered me that predictability and stability that I was talking about. And it definitely marked transitions for me. The end of the workday, the start of the weekend, the end of the weekend, and the beginning of holidays. Was it the same for you?
Oh, yeah. And like, just as an example of how we can weave rituals that aren't even ours into this, I know nothing about sports. And I do mean nothing. I know a little bit about soccer.
I don't know anything either.
And like, if I was with someone that liked football, I would jump in on their ritual of we do this, we have 3 beers, and then, the
Mhm.
gymnastics that you play in your head. And I
Yeah.
would follow their ritual of like sports. I don't even like sports. I know nothing about sports.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. It's like I'm just getting into sports because my parents are into it, which is interesting because they were never into it while I was growing up, but now they follow their Chiefs and they follow their Jayhawk basketball and we go over and join them and watch. But it's just interesting to me because I never followed it when I was a drinker. So it's not a big deal right now because my parents aren't drinkers, but I was the same as you. If I was with drinkers, it was going to be part of it. It was gonna be a ritual. If they said, "Hey, we drink every touchdown," or whatever, I was like,
Mhm.
"Okay, I'm there with you, I'll do it." And I
Mhm.
love that you said that because I want people to think outside the box because your drinking may show up in rituals in different ways, like pouring a drink becomes the cue of relaxation after work, or it can be a signal to socialize at events. That was a big one for me. "Oh, I know it's time to socialize, gotta have a beer in my hand." It can be a way to cope with stress or emotions. That one is a hard one. That was a hard one for me to break at least, and I would think it is for other people because I didn't realize how much I did it. I always told people like, "Oh, I don't drink when I'm upset." Yes, I did. I just told
Oh, yeah.
people that because it's like what you were supposed to tell people so people didn't
Mhm.
think you had a problem.
Boy, shoo, the emotions is, why, but I didn't know that then.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it too. You quit and your eyes start opening up to like, "Oh, I was doing this for this reason." But over time, the repetition of these habits ties drinking to specific times, emotions, or settings. and then it starts to feel automatic. And this is why we have to start figuring out how to replace those drinking rituals with healthier alternatives. It is crucial to your long term success. And I think it's more important that you really focus on replacing rather than eliminating the rituals,
Mhm.
because your brain is still going to crave that stability, the predictability of the ritual. So if you can replace it with something else and make adjustments, it's going to feel a lot easier in your non drinking life. All right. Are we ready to hop into how you can start identifying triggers and old rituals?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. I'm actually going to guide you through an exercise to help you identify your specific triggers and rituals. You can do this as you're listening, but I want to urge you to do it at a time when you can really focus. So if you're doing a chore right now or driving, that's totally fine. But I just want you to be like, I'm going to come back to this and I'm going to listen to this exercise again and I'm going to do it at a time where I can really focus. I think it's actually good sometimes. I have podcasts I listen to and they'll say that. I'll be like, okay, I am going to listen to it while I'm driving, and it's almost like your brain can absorb it, and then when you get home and you have a moment, you can actually do this.
Yeah, and you hear things you didn't hear before.
Yes, exactly, and I really do think there's something to hearing it, absorbing it, coming back to it, and going, "Okay, now I'm really gonna do the work," and we talk about you gotta do the work a lot. This is one of those things. People are like, "What's the work?" Hey, this is some of it, so you can do it. All right, I want you to ask yourself the following questions and write down your thoughts. So the first one is, when did I most often drink? Was it at specific times of the day, like evenings or weekends? Or were there particular events like holidays or social gatherings that led to drinking? And this can be a lot of answers. That's okay. Just have a huge brain dump of when did I drink most often? For me, I would have written down that it was about 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. every day. On the weekends, it started on Friday night and just went the whole weekend until about Sunday at like 3 or 4 is when I would usually shut it down so I could get quote unquote ready for work.
Mhm.
At that point, there was no getting ready. Was yours similar?
Very,
Yeah.
very, except for the stopping at 3 p.m. on Sunday.
I don't know how I did that. I'm always like, "That's crazy that I could shut." I think fear set in, and I'd
Mm.
be like, "Oh my
Mhm.
god." Like the Sunday scaries were this
Yes.
whole new level, and I would be like, "Oh my god, I have to go to work tomorrow." Or I'd start planning, "How could I call in sick tomorrow?" Like, it's such
Mhm.
a twisted thing. So the second question to ask yourself after you've gone through, "When did I drink most often?" I want you to ask yourself, what emotions led me to drink? It is okay if this one's really hard to answer. If you're brand new, like say you just started on January 1st, you're like, well, that's a big one. It is a big one, and it's okay to come back to this one a lot. So, what emotions led me to drink? Maybe it was to cope with stress or sadness or boredom, or even to celebrate happiness, which
Mhm.
I found out was a huge one for me. And you nodded when I said that one. So, I feel like it is for
Yeah,
you too.
that seemed obvious later on in the beginning. I was like, "Oh, wait, this is why they drink at baby showers,
Mhm.
birthday parties, weddings, funerals, to celebrate the life," right? And then I, at the beginning of my journey, could probably just tell you like the 5 or 6 basic
Mhm.
emotions and all of them. I drank over all of them.
And I think that's what you start to notice as you go farther and farther on your journey. You go, "Oh, it was all of them." But you really start to notice, like, when did your brain start triggering you to drink with each emotion? And you can
Mhm,
really start even narrowing it down more and more. So this is an activity for people brand new on their journey. This is an activity for people who are farther along to come back to too, and to do over and over and over throughout your journey. All right, the third question is, and if you're wondering, there's 5 questions. So the third question is, what environments triggered my drinking? Were there specific places like bars or restaurants or your home, or maybe situations like parties or work that made drinking feel automatic? Mine was home. What was yours?
Oh, mine was home, for
Yeah.
sure. And this one is so key. And if you're listening, you're like, "Oh my god, theirs was home. So was mine. We're gonna help."
Oh, yeah. And we're going to talk about changing that environment. And I know Heather did some really cool stuff around that. So she'll have some awesome tips with that. The fourth question is, who was often involved? Did I drink more often around certain people, friends, coworkers, or family? Mine was my husband, for sure. And then, but otherwise, everyone I surrounded myself was a drinker. Like I did that intentionally.
Yes, same here, and I would not admit that at
Mm-mm.
first,
Oh, yeah.
and I definitely 100% believer in the all of this and the environment and the people.
Yeah. And I think those 2 can almost be pretty easy ones to start managing in the beginning too, because you can do a little elimination in your environment. You can do a little elimination with people you hang out with. Obviously, not all the time, but sometimes you can distance yourself from certain friends in the beginning until you're ready to come back and start bringing people back in. That's something I did. And it worked for some people, it didn't work for others. I think I kind of found out some people just actually weren't my people. And
Yep.
that was a hard realization, but it's something that journaling helped a lot with, and it's something I still work with today. The very last question, this one I think is going to be really hard if you're brand new. So if it does feel overwhelming, that's okay. What did I believe I was gaining by drinking? Did I drink to relax, fit in, numb emotions, or maybe it's for another reason? I was like, oh, yeah, I drank to relax. I drank to fit in. I drank to numb emotions, but I wouldn't have told you that. I
No.
wouldn't have told you I drank to numb emotions at all. I wouldn't have told you that I drank to fit in until probably at least like 2 years into my journey could I start seeing some of those. But I
Yes.
could definitely tell you in the beginning that I drank to relax.
I just up until, like, what am I? Almost 4 years sober, and recently, I have just admitted to myself that I drank to fit in.
Yeah,
I
it's an
mean,
interesting one.
I don't that was me my ego getting in the way, and I wanna add just one thing. If you're listening and you're like, "Well, I mean, I gained some good things." That's okay. Doesn't
Yeah,
all have to be bad, and I want you to ask yourself, no matter where you are on your journey, is it good enough to stay the same?
yeah, that's a good question. And that's something that's so important too. If you're answering those questions and you are writing down things and you're like, well, that's a good thing though. That's okay. It's just a matter of you recognizing the rituals right now, and some of it is gonna be like, "Oh, that was a really good thing." So, I will put those 5 questions in the show notes, so if you just went through them and you're like, "Well, they talked between each one, I can't remember what they all were." Just go to the show notes really quick, you can grab them there, put them into your own journal, and you'll be good to go. So, now what do you do with those answers? You're gonna start recognizing the patterns. I want you to review your answers and identify recurring themes. Are there common times, places, emotions, or people that made drinking feel inevitable? And just highlight those as your key triggers and start saying, okay, that's something for me to be aware of. It doesn't mean I have to avoid these things at all costs. Maybe you do in the beginning, maybe you do when you're really, really volatile, but it's okay to start figuring it out. It is really just data for you to say, okay, this is something for me to be aware of. That's a trigger for me. And then I want you to start reframing your triggers. For each trigger, start brainstorming a healthier alternative. So, if stress after work was a trigger, consider replacing that with a drink like calming tea or journaling. I started doing evening tea when I first quit drinking, and it helped a lot. And it's a huge ritual. Well, not like huge. I wasn't doing loose leaf tea or anything, but it is like you boil your water, you pour it in, you have to let the tea steep. There's always a little quote on the tea bag
Mhm.
thing that hangs over the cup. Like, and you can sit there and kinda fiddle with the tea bag the whole time. Like, there's a little bit of a process to it. So that one I highly recommend, even if you're like, "I don't like tea." There's millions of teas out there. Go find one you like. That's
Yeah.
my tough love, Sarah.
There you go.
And then another idea is if social pressure was a factor, think about bringing a mocktail. I talk about that a lot. And a mocktail doesn't have to be this huge elaborate thing. You can just bring an NA beer, or Trader Joe's has these really good sparkling drinks. Like I got a sparkling pomegranate drink. It's so good. And it totally gives you that fizziness, and it's just something different for yourself. And it's in kind of a tall can, like Truly cans are, so it might be that little bit of disguise for you so you can avoid questions that maybe you're not ready for yet. And just start practicing a simple response for declining a drink. I say this all the time, practice in front of a mirror. I know it feels silly. When you're in the shower, practice. That's a
Yeah.
perfect place to do it.
I practice with my coach, and I practice with other folks, and this is one of the number one things that people ask me how to do.
Yeah. And I mean, it takes practice in real life situations, but when you're practicing with yourself, that's going to help too. Your brain, it's just like learning the lines for a play. and
Mhm.
being like, okay, this might happen. And I'm going to say this thing if it does. And it might not. But if it doesn't, then that's okay. You're just prepared. So, really go through all those triggers that we talked about and start saying, how can I change this? Are there any that like stand out for you that you would add on how you replaced certain things or how you reframed them?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. I'll just talk really quick about like, I just joined you in the evening tea. I just started joy journaling or junk journaling. And I just want to say if you've had the shittiest day you've ever had, it is like okay to roll your eyes about some hot tea and some journaling. Okay.
Oh my God, yes.
Grab a banana, chug some water, eat something that contains protein, eat some dark chocolate, and try to keep it moving.
Perfect advice. Thank you for sharing that. There's so many times where it's like, chug the water,
Yeah.
everything will be better. All
Mhm.
right, let's dive into creating some healthier alternatives. We talked a little bit about it when we did that exercise, but let's just think about how we can replace those old rituals that revolve around drinking. So, if an evening time was a drinking time for you because it was time for you to wind down, think about, like I said, replacing with herbal tea, maybe a warm bath. That's something that never sounds right to me, but for some people it does. Maybe doing a meditation in the evening. Even if you get home from work and you can sit in your car for 5 minutes and do a guided meditation before you walk into the house, that could be a new ritual for you. Because for me, that was the hardest transition coming from, work to the car. I was excited for that one. And then car, where I had been listening to a podcast, to going into my house where I knew it was time to transition to being mom. And it was a
Mhm.
hard transition. So doing something like hanging out in my car for a few minutes, doing a meditation, that would have done me wonders. I'm like, "Oh, I wish I would have done that one."
Right. That's a great tip because I spent a lot of time in the car trying to figure out a lot about alcohol, right?
Yeah.
And this is a great tip. And if your parents and fellow parents out there, magic happens in those 5 minutes alone in the car.
Mhm. It does.
So breathe, meditate, listen to your new favorite song, or
Yeah.
something that's gonna like either pump you up or chill you out, whatever you need.
And then start thinking about social rituals, if that's something that really showed up for you. Like I said, having a mocktail, inviting friends for coffee instead of to the bar, or hosting at your own house and having an alcohol free game night. That might feel overwhelming in the beginning if you were the person where everybody could come over and they knew you were the person with two liquor cabinets, because that was me. I'm definitely talking about me. And I had to really be clear with people like, I don't care if you come and drink all the old liquor from my liquor cabinet. I don't care if you bring your own liquor. I won't be drinking. And it worked for me. If that doesn't work for you, then do it differently. And then those celebratory moments. This, I feel like I obsessed about this. And then I feel like very few of these things have happened in my 5 years so far, but explore alternatives like sparkling water in a special glass or creating alcohol free cocktails, mocktails. And just think, how am I going to do this? I will say, like Thanksgiving, I brought a bajillion drinks to my parents' house where people don't even drink that much. But for myself, I brought so many drinks and I put them in special glasses and I made it a little bit of a ritual for me. Here are some ways that I actually replaced my old rituals. And Heather, I'm going to ask you about some of yours. So be thinking. I would still do that after work happy hour, but I would do it with kombucha instead of beer. Kombucha doesn't taste like beer and it doesn't taste like wine. It just tastes like kombucha. It has its own flavor. So it didn't trigger me in any of those ways, but it still felt really special. One, it's a little bit spendy if you buy it at the store. And if you brew it yourself, it takes a little bit of time. So either way, it's a special drink to indulge in. When I would get home from work, that's when I was really thinking about drinking. When I would get home, I had a plan to either go on a walk or do a chore while I was listening to a podcast instead of making that drink right away, because that was my thing. And I was like, it was kind of how you say, keep it moving. That really worked for me. And obviously, if my kids were there, involve them if I needed to. If they were doing their own thing, then I could do my own thing, right? And then when I would cook, that was a big time for me to have this ritualistic drinking. I would make a mocktail. And then that would help me so much. It sounds so dumb, but I would have my LaCroix with a squeeze of lime. It wasn't even fancy when I first quit drinking. I was just like, okay, pour the LaCroix into a glass, put a squeeze of lime in it, and that would help so much. So either way, it's a special drink to indulge in. When I would get home, I had a plan to either go on a walk or do a chore while I was listening to a podcast instead of making that drink right away, because that was my thing. And obviously, if my kids were there, involve them if I needed to. If they were doing their own thing, then I could do my own thing, right? And then when I would cook, that was a big time for me to have this ritualistic drinking. I would have my So what were the things you did to replace your rituals?
Okay, so when I didn't have my daughter, who was 10 months old at the time, to pick up from daycare, I changed my route on the way home and I took it as an opportunity to explore my surroundings.
Mhm.
I did that to avoid the places I used to stop. I used an app called Reframe that was really helpful with cravings and treasure. I did that, I think, a lot from the car now that I'm thinking about it. And pretty much as soon as I got home, I changed where I sat in the living room, rearranged it a bit, started spending more time upstairs versus downstairs. I started listening to audiobooks that were memoirs about Quitlet in my ears as I wasn't quite brave enough to, buy the paperback and open it.
Yeah.
And I really got into my skincare routine in the evening after my little one went to bed. And it was something I took so much pride in doing because it's something I could not do before the way that I could, not drinking.
Yeah.
And then I would treat myself with a show on Netflix. And one of the things that I love that I did was I took the earnings that I saved in a week. And every Friday, I would go get like a manicure or get like something really good for us all to eat for dinner to switch that Friday kickoff to the weekend.
Yeah.
You can insert whatever lands for you.
I love that idea. And to do it like as a weekly thing. And that Friday, I forgot. Like you mentioned that, that was such a hard time for me. The Friday, the kickoff to the weekend, I
Mhm.
would go buy like 4 different dark chocolate bars. I remember
Oh,
seeing
yeah.
my running buddy at the store and she died laughing when she saw me one time because I was like, "It's Friday," and she knew I had quit drinking, and she saw, like, the 4 or 5 chocolate bars, it was so
Oh,
many,
yeah.
and she was like, "Oh my god," and I was like, "Hey, it's better than a six-pack and a bottle of wine and then
It's
gin
better
and
than
tonic."
booze.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and she was like, "Oh, yeah, you're doing awesome." Like, it was just a funny thing to me, though, but yes, I had to do that. I had to have a plan on Fridays for sure to make it fun, and the idea to take the money that you saved throughout the week from drinking and treat yourself to something I feel like you just blew my mind, Heather.
Here we are.
I'm gonna start doing that now.
Oh, God, it's fantastic because you get
I
the
love it.
dopamine and then you get the
Yes.
feel-good chemicals because for me, I love doing nails, right? So your nails
Mhm.
look pretty. I didn't have to do them myself, which I have learned now as part of a ritual
Yeah.
for stress. That's what I do is I do my nails. I have a client that when she was having a craving, she would sit down and paint her nails throughout the craving.
That's a good one because
Mhm.
you can't do anything with your hands then either. You're kinda
Nope.
stuck. That's and then you look good too.
Right.
So, I'm gonna give you guys some quick tips just so to end it out here and just make you think a little bit beyond what we talked about. I really do want you to go back and do those questions if you so make sure you make the time to do that, but just some quick tips to help replace those rituals, make it a little easier. I want you to be prepared. So start thinking about and modifying your environment. So start stocking the kitchen with alcohol free options, way more than you think you should have. Okay. Like I talked about when I went to Thanksgiving dinner with the family and I brought like an obscene amount, do that. My
Mhm.
parents' fridge just still has some of my drinks in it now. When I go over, I don't have to think about it. And then remove triggers from your home. Think about wine glasses or actual alcohol if that is a trigger for you. How what can you get out? Yeah, because for a lot of people, that's a huge one. For whatever reason, I was able to have the alcohol in my house, but it annoyed me. I wanted it out. That was I it's like I couldn't figure out how to get rid of it. Like, I kept being like, "Can I sell this on Facebook Marketplace?" Like, I really was like, "I don't know, I paid for this, and there's still a lot in there." And then I was like, "Oh, I think I can get, like, arrested if I don't have a liquor license." So, I slowly gave it away to friends. I figured that out. But really remove the triggers, and like Heather was talking about, change up your environment, rearrange your space if you need to, sit in a different chair and create cozy, sober this is hard to say, but I love this. Create cozy, sober zones.
I
Like
love this.
I just love create cozy zones,
Right?
don't even worry about if it's a sober zone. Create cozy little spots in your house and actually go sit in them because I think that's something too. Sometimes we have those cute little spots in our house and we never go to them. Go to them now. and sit in them and do your nails or read a book. Just drink your mocktail for a second and be like, look at
Mhm.
me. I enjoyed that little space in my house. Next thing I want you to think about is mindset. Always be working on shifting your mindset from missing out to the fact that you're gaining a better life, going from that mindset of deprivation to the mindset of abundance. And focus always on the positive changes that sobriety is bringing you: better sleep, more energy, better connections with friends, the ability to drive whenever the hell you want. That was a huge
Yes.
one for me in the beginning. Like, oh, I can go pick up takeout. I don't have to have it delivered to me. Like, I would go do that just because I could.
Right.
Yes, I'm gonna do it. My kids would be like, "I have something I need to get for school tomorrow." I'd be like, "Yes," instead of being angry at them. So I was
Mhm.
like, "I can." So do those, like, really celebrate those things. And the last thing is find support. Find support through this podcast, other sober content creators, join a community like the Daymakers, or if you need something in person, think about AA, Smart Recovery, Dharma Recovery. Connect with a coach like Heather, and think of friends that you know will support you through the journey. Like I was talking about my running buddy. She knew. She was one of the very few people that knew in the beginning. She didn't get it because she knew me as her running buddy, not as her drinking buddy. So it was kind of boggled her mind, but she knew and she supported me and I knew she would. So think about those people. Any other quick tips for people?
I really think the key is connection. I really
Mhm.
believe that because that's what it took when I joined the Daymakers back in 2021. I also think that reaching out to someone, like you said, is such a key element, and trying to stay in the mindset of, I'm doing this for a better life.
They're all just little shifts that you need to make, and it'll make it all be so much easier. So I hope this all really helped. I want you to take that time, start identifying your triggers, start creating meaningful rituals instead of your alcohol based rituals. Start being like, what can I do to create meaningful rituals in my life that give me a sense of purpose? And I want you to try one new ritual this week. Just be like, I'm going to do this one thing they suggested. And if you do that one thing, screenshot this podcast, share the one thing you did, share it in your Instagram or Facebook, and tag us because we would love to see that.
Yeah,
And
I can't wait to see this.
yes. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. It helps us so much, and leave a review. I love reading those, and so does Heather. And then share this episode with someone that just started Dry January. Maybe you're doing it with a friend, share this episode with them.
All right. Bye, y'all.